we look at Tennessee's offensive linemen, and the really good ones seem to be non-Heupel guys, and the guys that are struggling to have an impact seem to be Heupel guys. Are we wrong? Are we being negative there? Or is there something to that as you see the early stages, not really early anymore, but of Heupel's recruiting?
Well, I'm singing your tune. One of my biggest criticisms of the Heupel program has been their inability to develop offensive linemen, excuse me, that they recruited. Who are they? Who are the really good ones? I mean, if you look at the best offensive lineman they've had, Cooper Mays was a Jeremy Pruitt guy. If you go back to Darnell Wright, that was pre-Heupel. If you go back to Jerome Carvin, that was pre-Heupel. Their best offensive linemen have been players that were not recruited under Heupel. And so I don't know why that has happened. They have actually signed some offensive linemen that had pretty good ratings. Addison Nichols comes to mind. He was a pretty good 4-star offensive lineman. He's not even in the program now. I think that's one of the biggest issues, and I don't have a good explanation for why that is, but the facts are indisputable in that regard. I will also add this, and I've said this since he got here. You don't have to have a great offensive line to have a great offense in this system. It masks, in my opinion, the fact that you might be average on the offensive line, because the way they run up tempo, they typically have somewhat of an advantage in the box. If you got 6 in the box, you got 5 blockers, that's to your advantage, okay? But also, has Tennessee not struggled in short yardage situations? Because their offensive line can't blow people off the ball. But I agree to the point that offensive linemen recruited under Heupel's watch have not developed typically into really good players, and I don't have a good answer for that.
Me either, Caleb.
Yeah, I've wondered the same thing, and this has been just a larger overall red flag about talent evaluation in general. Jimmy, I do want to ask a little bit though, because I somewhat disagree about the idea that they don't have to be really good. I just think it's what they have to be good at. I do think that interior linemen have to have a higher IQ than a lot of other interior linemen in other systems, because I think they have to understand leverage and blocking schemes and I guess directional blocking. I equate it to, do you remember the Tom Moore, Peyton Manning offense with the Colts that was so successful for years? You know, Jeff Saturday wasn't like a blow you away great interior blocker that was going to win battles, but he understood, you know, stretch plays, zone blocking, things like that to give Peyton just enough time to get rid of the ball or to allow Edgerrin James or Joseph Adai just to hit that hole on the outside. It's more vertical for Tennessee. There's no stretch run plays, but I think they have to. That's why I think Cooper Mays is so valuable. He understands he understands directional blocking probably better than anybody Tennessee's had in a long time.
I agree with that. Yeah. You just have to get in the way. If you get a hat on a hat, the way they run that offense, the running backs will dart past you. You don't have to be a great drive blocker. You don't have to knock somebody 7 yards into the backfield like Trey Smith would do. All you got to do is engage and just make sure he doesn't throw you away quickly, the defender, because the running back's going to shoot through that hole. And that's what I think made Jalen Wright so good and the other running backs that Tennessee has had under Heupel. So and what I'm saying on that also is, other than Darnell Wright and maybe Cooper Mays, these are not NFL offensive linemen. These are not road graders. These are guys that do need to be smart, and they just need to make sure they block the right guy, get a hat on a hat. And if they do that, the run game is going to be successful.
An interesting point. Another thing that I have noticed with Josh Heupel's recruiting lately, and maybe this attributes to the fact that he hasn't had guys that have been big time contributors on the offensive line so far. It seems to me, and with the Sanders kid, the David Sanders kid, and some other guys that they are recruiting, they're going after guards and tackles. They're not going after offensive linemen. They're going for the stout, tough, strong guys at guard, and they're going for the more mobile guys at tackle. That's something that I have noticed from watching tape. Jimmy, I think that's by design. I think that fits Heupel's offense, whereas if a 4-star knocks on your door and you're at Tennessee last year or a couple of years ago, you take his phone call no matter what position he plays on the offensive line.
Yeah, and I think the mobility part is the one thing, because in this scheme where you spread people out and you have wider splits on your offensive line, you do need to have mobile offensive linemen. So I think they would rather have a 280-pound tackle that's mobile than a 310-pound tackle who's just a road grader and can only block straight ahead. So I think that is a part of their philosophy. And you know what? It's worked because Tennessee. Yeah. I mean, did anybody really think Tennessee had a great offensive line last year? But who led the SEC in rushing? Tennessee. And they've been up there for 3 years in a row among the leaders in the SEC in rushing. And I think it has more to do with the scheme than having a great offensive line.
It's funny you bring that up, guys. I mean, just as the group, Caleb, you too. As a group, considering Cooper Mays' injury, that was a C or C- offensive line. Considering the injury, am I wrong there?
I mean, I think the offensive line cost them the Florida game. I mean, it was because Cooper Mays was hurt. So
I mean,
yes,
C- Jimmy, am I off there?
No, I think the same thing. I don't think Tennessee has a great offensive line, but they don't need to be great. They need to be competent.
But Jimmy, you also remember when Cooper was banged up in the 2021 season, and Hendon Hooker, he got sacked. I think was like 4th in the nation in most times sacked that year in 2021, despite him being very, very good and us all thinking he was very good. I remember writing a lot in 2022 talking about, well, Hendon Hooker's pocket presence was horrible in 2021. And I wrote a lot about how improved it was in 2022. And then I look back now and I'm like, was it really improved or was it just Cooper Mays was healthy and that changed the entire offensive line?
Well, another part is I thought Darnell Wright had a great year. I didn't think Darnell Wright was great until his senior year. And I thought he was terrific his last year. So I think that was a part of it. Cooper Mays was a part of it. Maybe another part of it was the offensive linemen actually learning the system that they wanted. I'm not sure that they could all gather the information they wanted or gel that first year as a group. So I think all those things were part of it. But I thought Hooker made significant improvement between his 2021 season and 22.
I tried. Cooper said he struggled still with just the athletic aspect of it from year to year. I mean, that's a massive change going from running 50 plays to 90 plays. I look at one player in particular. We have not mentioned his name. That is a very key player for Tennessee's offensive line. I remind you, the show is represented by Banks and Jones. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Jimmy, I went on my little diatribe about how Tennessee's able to go after tackles and guards now instead of just offensive linemen, and that's better for the program, and that all sounds well and good, but that should be accurate for center as well. And if something were to happen to Cooper Mays, based off who I've talked to, I don't think Bison Lang's ready to go, and I think you'd have a lot of shifting around. We haven't mentioned Bison Lang's name yet, but why is he not ready to play at center? Because that's a position, it's mental, it's fundamentals. It's not as physically demanding. He should be ready to go, and I've been told he's not.
Did he play center in high school?
He did play center in high school, I believe.
I don't know that. I'm asking that out of ignorance. Yeah. I don't really know if he did. I don't think it's a real easy position to play. I think Cooper Mays, who played center in high school for multiple years, he's also very intelligent. He's probably the smartest offensive lineman that they have. I think it requires a skill set and an intelligence level that makes it difficult. I don't think you can just take a guard or a tackle and move him to center and say, oh, okay, we're all right there. In particular, not in this offense, which does require a high IQ. So I don't know if Lang played much center in high school. I don't know many offensive linemen on their team that played much center in high school. But I'll go back to what Caleb said about he thinks that Tennessee lost the Florida game because Cooper Mays wasn't there. If Mays goes down, this team's in trouble because I don't think there is a center that can come in. Now, I think it could be mitigated a little bit. Joe Milton couldn't mitigate things because, in my opinion, he didn't fit the system. Nico does. So Nico would be able to make more plays, I think, in this system. But if you don't have Mays, man, they're in trouble on offense. They will not be nearly as productive as I'm predicting. And my prediction is they're going to average 38 to 40 points a game. They won't do that if they don't have Cooper Mays.
I agree. And Caleb, for the record, Lang played tackle, listed as a tackle coming out of high school, but they immediately moved him to center, so they at least had that plan in place. I wanted to get everybody updated on that. Go ahead.
So, Jimmy, elephant in the room here that we haven't brought up because we're talking about blocking. I want to get to pass blocking for a second. Cooper Mays getting hurt is a problem on its own. Another problem, though, and I want to know your thoughts on this, is I don't think Tennessee has a running back yet that can be a feature back and pick up pass pro. I don't think Dylan Sampson's ever going to be big enough to be able to pick up pass pro and be a feature back. Khalifa Keith isn't athletic enough to be a feature back. I don't trust Cam Selden's vision. I've seen too many mistakes he's made on obvious. He's got Trent Richardson level vision to me. So if Peyton Lewis doesn't step in at running back this year and work out, Tennessee's got a big problem there for pass pro, don't they?
Yeah. Now, I'll say this. I didn't think Jalen Wright was a very good pass protector when he first got to Tennessee. He was also willing to gain, about 30 pounds? I mean, he put on a lot of weight. He was a high school sprinter. He was a little bit undersized weight-wise, a little bit like Dylan Sampson. But then he ended up being, 212, 215?
Power back almost.
Yeah. So, and I haven't seen that out of Sampson. So to the point about a running back being really good in pass protection, I think that is a problem. Now, how do you coach around that? Do you keep a tight end in to help block? Do you have an H-back to help in pass protection? I don't know. You're going to have to scheme around it. But to that point, I think Tennessee does have an issue with pass protection among running backs. It's not to say they can't improve dramatically from last season to this season, but going into this season, I think that is a concern.